Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise pros, Stan the Man, Paul Segreto, Badlands, baby. Franchising today, sustainable growth through sensible franchising. Franchise today, sustainable growth through sensible franchising. Franchise today, franchise today, franchising today. Yeah.
Hello, everyone in the franchise world. My name is Paul Segreto, and this is Franchise Today. Today is Wednesday, August 16th, and I'm reporting live from Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada, where the temperature is a seasonally cool 98 degrees. At least that's what the weathermen have been saying on TV. In any event, it's usually now that I bring on my co-host, Stan Friedman, who then shares the weather in his area. But today, we're doing something a little bit different on Franchise Today. It's actually long overdue. Today, Stan will be in the spotlight as we discuss his successful, illustrious career in franchising, his many contributions to our great industry and community, and, of course, his insight about technology and franchising today. But before I bring on Stan, let's talk about the front of the house. Yeah, this is the part of the show that Stan typically presents, but as he sits anxiously awaiting his cue, I will give you a little bit of an update on today's front of the house. The IFA says, calling all franchisees, we need your voice. Changes in Washington can drastically affect your franchise. Equip yourself with the knowledge to protect and enhance your business by attending IFA's Franchise Action Network annual meeting, September 11th through 13th in Washington, D.C. If you haven't already registered, and of course franchise professionals as well, please do so at franchise.org. Just a quick reminder, Franchise Capital Exchange is next week in Chicago, and the following week, of course, Brian Schnell and his team at Faegre Daniels at the Summit in Minneapolis the following week, and that's, of course, right into the Labor Day weekend. Oh, my God, where has the summer gone? You know, on the BeTheBoss.com site, which is part of MFV Exposition, it states, Stan's passion for helping individuals and companies achieve their goals via franchising is evidenced by his service to the franchise community, and I absolutely could not agree more. Stan, you know, I love that I can welcome you to Franchise Today. Welcome.
Well, thanks, Paul. This kind of feels funny, a little funky, doesn't it? It's a little bit different.
It is a little bit different. You know, first of all, we're not texting back and forth like we usually do behind the scenes so that we don't step on each other and step on the guests. And, of course, we're usually in a very progressive manner working together to ask questions and take the individual through the guest through the show. And so that should be old hat for us. But I think this is definitely long overdue, Stan. I mean, every week, every time I talk to you, I learn something new, something that you certainly give back to the franchise community in so many different ways. And it's interesting that as we're talking to different guests whose paths you might have crossed at some time in your career, I find out, you know, something new about a certain stop on your career. And I think it's time, and as I said at the beginning, it's long overdue that we go ahead and let our audience know entirely about, you know, Stan Friedman and your long career and everything that you do in franchising. So why don't we start as we typically do with our guests? Take us back about Stan Friedman as far back as you'd like to go, and bring us up to where we are today.
So does that mean I have to do what I do all the time when people ask how long we've been around, and I always quip that I'm the guy who told Ben Franklin, go fly a kite. That's how long I've been around, Paul. But you know what?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I can go back to the years where I should have been doing the things that most people do in preparation for their careers. But in my years, that should have been the best, school years. I was not exactly the model student. I had a hard time even getting into the classroom. I could figure out ways to cut classes and not get caught. I was just always a planner. But, those early years, I didn't pay enough attention to the things that I should have then. And so, I found my way to franchising through a career in broadcast first, which was exactly right for me because it was a completely irresponsible lifestyle, a completely irresponsible industry. Anybody who ever watched WKRP in Cincinnati, that couldn't be any more spot on for the stereotypical life in radio. And so, I got to hang with people I shouldn't have and party around in places that I otherwise would never have had access to. And, just live life in the fast lane. And it was a pretty irresponsible life. It was me, my dog, Chinese food, waterbed. Those were the early years. Just hanging out and living life in the moment, which everyone says you should do. I did it for a number of years. And then, at some point, Peter Pan grew up. I was working my last radio job in Dallas. Oh, no, it was in Miami, Florida. Where I got exposed to franchising. And it was through a radio station client that I learned about franchising. And it was in the real estate world. It was conversion franchising. It was a little bit apart from the things that most of us in the mainstream of franchising experience because we're always typically looking for startups and newbies, where in the real estate world, it was conversions. You'd drop into a market and you would know who your targets were. The top 2, 3, 4, or 5 independent brokers were the ones that you would find listed in the Homes magazines, the ones that had the lion's share of listings and the most agents. And those would be the ones that we'd go to and to try to convince them that everything that they had that they thought and deemed to be themselves as the franchise, that we could show them things that they could do to better compete for agents and to better have training and reload services and things like that available to them, that would make them assured that they could hold on to their segment of the market. And in those years, RE/MAX was really just popping onto the grid. And in most major markets, brokers that were typically splitting commissions with their high-performing agents were losing their high-performing agents to this thing called RE/MAX, which was the 100% concept. There were no splits on commissions. RE/MAX agents just paid their brokers for desk space and didn't pay commissions. So a lot of the top agents in any market in the country were peeling off and going to RE/MAX. And, of course, guys like me would show up to those brokers' doors and say, so how's it feel to be number 2 now? The top of the market's gone to RE/MAX. And more of it's going to go there if you don't protect yourself with something that keeps your people here. And that was kind of fear of loss was a great motivator with real estate brokers. But that's how I got into franchising. I got into it calling on high-profile net worth individuals, real estate brokers with big egos, and trying to help them understand that they may have been rock stars in their minds and they may have been the big name and the big gun in their minds in that marketplace, but that, a couple hundred miles down the road, nobody's ever heard of you, but they all know my name. They all know my brand.
Right.
We're global. And that's how it started.
Very interesting. Well, that's very interesting. And then from there, you actually wound up with a couple of brands with some pretty popular names. Why don't you take us through that track?
Well, I was getting relocated out of Atlanta by ERA Real Estate, moving me to Dallas, which is a place I'd had a number of years in my life, lived there and loved Dallas. But my wife wasn't real happy about going to Dallas. She loved our house. She loved Atlanta. And we were faced with a move to Dallas, and I had an opportunity then to stay in Atlanta and to get into the broader spectrum of franchising with a company called Blimpie Subs and Salads. And I made a move to Blimpie that would have been 1996 or so, maybe 97, and joined Blimpie as a national franchise development director. It was the first of 3 jobs or 3 titles that I had at Blimpie. And it was a whole new world for me. I really got exposed to things in the franchise world that you don't see when you're just in the real estate side of franchising. The real estate companies typically didn't get involved with IFA. Everything with them was the National Association of Realtors or their own conventions, but they weren't really IFA-centric back in those days. So I didn't get exposed to anything like that until I went to work for Blimpie, and I had a boss who was the guy who hired me. Actually, I wound up replacing him very shortly thereafter, Dennis Fuller, who's still one of my closest friends in franchising. Dennis did something that really set the tone for me and my attitude toward franchising and IFA. Dennis took me around. In fact, it was the year that MFV took the IFE to Chicago. Do we all remember what a train wreck that year was? When that event moved from Washington after years in D.C. It went to Chicago. And as I remember, there was one big ticket, like FranJam has become the big ticket every year for convention time, that the must-go-to party is FranJam. Well, during the MFV show in Chicago, there was a go-to party that everybody wanted to be invited to, and it was Rhonda Sanderson and Victoria Conte. Victoria was then with Success Magazine. And she and Rhonda would put on a shindig that everybody wanted to get invited to. And Dennis got me invited. And so I met a whole lot of people at that first, it was kind of like my coming out party with Blimpie. And I met a ton of people. And Dennis just kind of transferred all of his relationships, and he'd been around a long time. Dennis gave all of his relationships to me. He basically gave me access and told everybody that he had a tight friendship and kinship with, this is what you have given me, give to him. This is a good guy, and he's on my team now. And after Dennis knew I was going to be replacing him, he basically did the same thing. He just gave me complete rights of passage to his Rolodex. And he transferred title and ownership of all of his relationships to me and gave me a fast track unlike any that you could have prayed for. It would have taken years for me to establish the kinds of relationships that Dennis helped me establish right then out of the gate. And I think that it was at Blimpie, too, that IFA became important because the guy who approved Dennis hiring me is no longer with us, but he was an executive VP, and at Blimpie, his name was Chuck Linus. Chuck was the president of the New York State Restaurant Association, and he was on the board of directors of the IFA. And when Chuck hired me, I don't even know if anyone at IFA's ever heard this or not. When Chuck hired me, he gave me a mandate. And the mandate was, you're going to put in your minimum 40 hours a week working for Blimpie, but you're also going to commit to at least 40 hours a month as a committee member at IFA. You're going to have to join a committee. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 that I want you to look at, but you're going to give 40 hours a month to the IFA because I'm on the board, and I need support from our people. So all executives at this company do IFA work. Basically, what Chuck was saying was, you do the work, I'm going to get the credit, but you're going to do that. You're going to make an IFA commitment. And Chuck really influenced me strongly to get involved with the Minorities and Franchising Committee, and wanted me to go do work on that committee. Blimpie, was a Hoboken, New Jersey-based company, or born out of. Actually, It was based in New York, but Hoboken and inner cities in the Northeast were where Blimpie's brand really gained the most traction in the early years. And Chuck felt like it would be a good place for me to go to be working on the Minorities and Franchising Committee, and that's literally how all the work in diversity began, was because of Chuck.
Wow. And, of course, that led to the Harrison Award, the Diversity Award that the IFA bestowed upon you several years back. It's interesting. I had never heard, that part of the story. But in between then and Blimpie's, you had a couple of other stops. Why don't you share some of that?
Happy to. And before we close off on Chuck and Blimpie the award, Paul, I was very proud to get that award. At Blimpie, I created an initiative that was called BUILD, and that stood for the Blimpie Urban Initiative for Leadership Development. And we were giving people the opportunity to get a free Blimpie franchise and have to pay for the franchise fee if they put it in any of the federal empowerment zones or enterprise zones in the country. And it got Tony Khanza, Blimpie's founder and CEO, and myself a day at the White House. And we spent a day in '98. It was the Summer Community Empowerment Conference, the White House Community Empowerment Conference, and we spent a full day with Clinton, Gore, and a whole bunch of people we had no business being with. Mayors of many cities and economic development officers, people throwing business cards at us when you come into, our town with this initiative. It was quite an incredible experience, one I'll treasure and never forget. Albeit not for the reasons of which side of the aisle was in office at the time, but really it was a powerful experience for me, and I really treasure those memories. On from Blimpie, I went to work traveling around the world for a company that was called World Sites, today known as WSI Internet, and spent some years not selling or awarding franchises there, but just helping at a moment in time where anything that had a .com after it was golden. This is 1999, before the 2000 .com bubble burst. Anything associated with the internet was just moving at the speed of light. And I was tasked with trying to help a company that was franchising internet services keep pace with those who have been buying franchises. And weeks, months later, some of the fundamental parts of the offerings when they made the acquisition of the franchise were moving at the speed of light. So think about having all these different versions of franchisees out there month over month in a sandwich business like a Blimpie. If we trained somebody in 1996 or 7, somebody even 10 years later was getting fundamentally the same training. Sure, sandwiches come in and out, menu items change, but the fundamentals of your brand are fundamentally the same. With the internet, Paul, we know how quick this industry and technology has moved. And so you had people that were acquiring franchises all over the world and acquiring a franchise at a moment in time where what they bought is what they thought everyone else has. And now you've got every month different versions of your franchise out there.
Sure.
It took some effort. It took some effort to harness all that and to bring the offering, to pare the offering down to a place where the fundamentals could be the same over time. And great learning experience for me. And it was a great learning experience for the brand. And happily, they were able to fine-tune it. And WSI continues to thrive and do well. And in fact, the people that were part of my life then are still part of my life now. And so, as I've always said, Paul, I love to move along and change shirts and change brands, but collect people every step of the way. And those that we meet and we value, we hold on to and bring them back into our lives again at a later date.
Yep, always seems to be the case when I'm speaking with you and you bringing up somebody from a conference a year ago or a path that you crossed 5 years ago, and it always amazes me when we bring on a guest who's been in franchising as long as us, and it comes about that they mention something that someplace they were at 20 years ago, and you say, "Oh, did you know so and so? Oh, I remember this." And all of a sudden there's a couple of dots connected, and I just shake my head in amazement because you certainly have made quite an impact over the years. And receiving the Ronald E. Harrison Diversity Award from the IFA, I know had to be one of the key high points in your life and in your career, and it in my opinion certainly was very, very well deserved. So you were at WSI and then you leave. So let's fill in the gap between then and where you are today.
Well, Wing Zone was the next stop, which was an amazing experience for me as well, and so many parallels there. I met Matt Friedman at a franchise update conference here in Atlanta. One year when I was still at Blimpie, I was at WSI, and I was traveling around the world and doing a lot of globe trotting. And I spoke at the conference. And at the end of the session, as sometimes happens, people that don't want to raise their hand or ask a question or say hello, or say something publicly want to come say hello to you at the end of the session. And so at the end of the session, Matt Friedman walked up along with another gentleman named Phil Friedman. And I didn't know either of them. Now, I didn't know either that there was another Friedman anywhere in franchising, much less in the same building as me. And so Matt comes up and introduces himself, and I say hello to him, and then I kind of look over and see Phil's badge, and I look at Phil, who's an older gentleman, and I look at Matt, and I made the assumption that so many people over the years that I was at Wing Zone made about Matt and me. I said, you must be his dad. And he said, no, we just met 10 minutes ago, and now we're coming up here to meet another Friedman. So that day, I learned more about Matt and Phil Friedman, and Matt continued to ping me and write me emails and send me correspondence. And, I've been all over the world. I'd get an email from Matt and say, maybe we can go grab a lunch next week. And I'd say, I'm in, the UK or somewhere. But Matt and I started talking professionally about things. And, he was at a stage where Wing Zone then was maybe 25 or 30 or 35 units. And he just picking my brain. And we came to learn through getting to know each other that we grew up in very close neighborhoods to each other in New York, never knew each other. We lived a mile or two apart here in Atlanta and never knew each other. And ultimately, I became partners with he and Adam Scott and spent from 03 to 06 in some of the most fun and wonderful memories of my franchising career are all relevant to Wing Zone and the fun that we had with the Buffalo Wing Festival, which is still a huge part of my life. Those were good years, and those are great guys, and they're smart guys, and it was just great being a part of that growth and experience. And again, paying forward by paying back by paying forward. It all started with Dennis Fuller, and it just continued to roll like a snowball for me. More and more involvement in programs like IFA, more and more initiatives through my work in diversity, friends that I made along the way in that world that I never would have known, people I never would have had exposure to. My buddy Don Graves, who wound up in the Obama White House, somebody that I've done work in diversity with through the IFA when he was a lobbyist. I'd never have known Don. And there are many others like him that would have never entered my life. Our paths would have had no other reason to intersect. And through those intersections and common beliefs and things that we shared passion for, great friendships were born, and they continue to be a part of my life.
That's absolutely tremendous. It's, as you're mentioning that about Wing Zone, I started thinking about, how all these dots connect even further and how they continue. Of course, you mentioned as we were talking about earlier in the show, coming up on Labor Day weekend is the annual wing event that you're always part of, so you can share some of that information. But it's, even though you have nothing to do with that industry segment, your connection remains. And what always amazes me is all the different things that you're involved in. Professional Athletes Franchise Initiative, which obviously has a lot to do with diversity as well, and dealing with professional athletes in the twilight of their career. The commitment that you have to the IFA, not only just as an active member, but being on the board and being very involved in the supplier side of things. This Southeast Franchise Forum. I mean, just the list goes on and on over the years. And certainly what BeTheBoss.com stated, your passion for helping individuals and companies achieve their goals via franchising. I mean, it's just been absolutely tremendous. But what I've also seen, Stan, that I admire a lot is a lot of times you do this in a very subtle way. There's no grandeur, there's no big showcasing, and it's very subtle. You connect the dots, and I know just last year, stepping in and doing the A to Z's of franchising, you made an impact on an individual that we just recently talked about. Share that story. I think that's a tremendous story, and I think it just epitomizes how well you do connect the dots.
Well, it was a fun thing to do, and it's more rewarding than ever to get the back end conclusion a year or so later for something that you did when you did it selflessly. I was given the privilege by Tom Portese and Steve Gross at MFV to deliver the program in Dallas and at Franchise Expo South and West that Dr. John Hayes has for years been teaching at the IFE in New York, the A to Z's of buying a franchise. And I got invited to do that because it was, they needed somebody who had the cred and knew what's going on, but wouldn't necessarily be in a straight line of fire where you could benefit directly or commercially from the material that you were teaching. You got a room full of people that pay MFV $100 or so, whatever it is, to learn how to go down on the floor of that show and to learn about buying a franchise. And so they needed somebody who could teach it but wouldn't have any commercial connectivity directly, and that was why I said I'd do it. And to me, I sponsor the shows and I sponsor MFV as a non-showcased or non-participating in that I don't have a booth, non-exhibiting supplier, because there's really no need in my current position to have a booth at a show. I'm not there. Nobody's there to talk to me about software. They're there to exhibit and talk to prospective franchisees. But I support the shows, and I met somebody that was part of that class, and he contacted me after the class, sent me an email thanking him for what he learned, and I further talked with him and gave him the names of some of the leading brokers that he may want to. He wanted to have a conversation with some brokers to learn more about how he can proceed. And I put him in touch with 2 or 3 brokers. He made a decision in favor of one, and actually a year or so later just bought a franchise. And the broker called to remind me of the fact that I made that connection for him. And I said, look, you closed the deal, but that guy bought a franchise because he went to Franchise Expo South. The show is what delivered the opportunity for him to learn what he learned in the A to Z's. He went down, he walked the floor, he got comfortable with a little bit more about what to talk about and how. And then, of course, you as a broker guided him further and helped him through his introspectives to narrow down what it was he was going to look for. But, you got to love it when a year later you hear back from somebody whose name you never would have remembered knowing and find out that you touched him in a way that impacted his life positively. And now he's a franchisee. And thankfully, he's a franchisee of a brand that's also a client of mine. So in more than
the cherry on
the
the
absolutely.
cherry on the top for sure.
But
that's
that's the kind of thing that's what makes franchising what it is, Paul. It's that interdependency. It's that people part of life that in so many other businesses get lost. I think back to people that have been part of my life, like Ron Feldman and Nate Greenberg and Jerry Darnell, and we Marty Greenbaum. I mean, we just continue to grow and travel through changes in our lives. But there's this nucleus of people that continue to be the nucleus of people that always have each other's backs and always know somebody that you don't know that you should know or need to know. You and me experience this every week. We have guests that I can't believe we don't know these people. How have we been in this business for 25, 30 years and we don't know these people? And that it's humbling. But sometimes I'll share a V card. Jerry will ask me for contact info on somebody and say, how can you not know them? And vice versa. It happens both ways. But it's an amazing thing, the space that we live in and the way we pay forward to pay back and continue. It's kind of like we're all protecting the brand of franchising. And IFA that's what, if anything at all that IFA does, and it's why the conventions are so meaningful, is because when we go to the convention, we flip hats. All of us kind of act like we're franchisees when we go to the convention, and IFA is the franchisor. So no matter what brand you're from,
Right.
and no matter what your concept's about, we all go sit in rooms together and we share information that you would never find anybody sharing at a Chamber of Commerce meeting in a local market and going back home and competing directly. But when we go to convention, we all throw in, and the flag that we follow there is IFA, and it's the glue that holds it all together, Paul.
Yep, it's certainly one big community. You're listening to Franchise Today. I'm Paul Segreto, and I'm talking today with longtime franchise professional, trusted colleague, and of course friend, Stan Friedman. Franchise Today is brought to you by the Franchise Foundry, where they've been bringing emerging brands to market for more than 30 years. The Foundry fosters healthy, sustainable growth for their clients, the kind that comes from experience. The Franchise Foundry provides both coaching and consulting, a hybrid approach that delivers more effective solutions for both the franchisor's corporate team as well as for their franchisees. The Franchise Foundry team is rich in practical hands-on experience and expertise with general business management, operational and change management, digital marketing, and, of course, franchise recruitment and development. Plus, the Foundry team can also assist you with creating roadmaps for potential mergers and acquisitions and provide you with the guidance needed to navigate them. Learn more about Franchise Foundry along with their expanding list of clients at www.franchisefoundry.com. Franchise Today is also brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering best-in-class CRM and document management software designed specifically for franchising. FRM empowers a real-time business intelligence, communication, and collaboration between all members of the franchisor's team and prospective as well as existing franchisees. This enables you to simply and seamlessly track, access, and manage all messages to and from prospective and existing franchisees, including text. Legal and compliance is simplified too, with FRM's document management, and even site visits can be digitally facilitated and scored with FRM. Make today the day you give FRM a look and assure that all of your candidate and franchisee correspondence, including text messages, are being permanently tracked and stored in candidate and franchisee records. FRM even provides state-of-the-art digital experiences for your prospective franchisees, replacing old-style virtual brochures. No long-term contracts, multiple upgrades each year at no additional cost. Each year, no excuses, just solutions on the web at frmsolutions.com. Stan, you had a couple of stops there. You also had Maggie Moo's and a couple of others along the way. If you want to just touch on them, and then we'll just move on to a couple of other questions that I have.
Well, I had a really short run with Maggie Moo's, Paul. It was almost like it took longer for them to recruit me than I actually got to spend being there. But it was a fun experience, but it was a short-lived one. I joined them just prior to their acquisition of Marble Slab, or the acquisition of Marble Slab and Maggie Moo's by Nexen Brands, and for various reasons that didn't make sense to me. I mean, I was recruited to Maggie's because of a culture that it was appealing to me. The culture that John Jameson was the CEO. There was a great team that John put together and invited me to be a part of, and all of the reasons that I made the change and moved on to Maggie Moo's were going away with Nexen's acquisition of the company, and it just kind of made me feel like I came here for something that's no longer the reason. I'm not going to stay. I just didn't want to be there because what I left to go there for was no longer going to be existent. So I moved on quickly, and I made some changes. I wound up with a friend of many years getting into a concept that I was able to co-found as a franchise business, and that was in 2007, and nobody knew then what was coming in 2008. But it was a B2B kind of a concept that was very much dependent upon the creation of jobs as the centrist business offering dealt with tax credits that were made available by the government when certain businesses hired in certain geographic areas or in certain demographic categories tax credits that really could amount to substantial and significant amounts of money. And so I co-founded this franchise brand at a time where it was seemingly making a great deal of sense, but again, nobody knew that the button was going to get pushed in '08, and the recession just took the ground out from under us. And anything to do with jobs creation was off the table, as we all know. For a number of years, we went into free fall in terms of jobs creation. And so that concept went away, and my one-time opportunity as a founder went with it. And I wasn't really ready to go back inside. I didn't feel like I could just go take another job right then. So I hung a shingle for a while, and I did some consulting. I had a great time working with the guys down in Florida at I-9 Sports, and helped them, in fact, put together a process peak system for themselves, who knew then that that would become important in my future. But I did that, and from there moved into working with some other boutique companies, smaller brands that needed specialized experience that I was qualified to help them with. And then I spent a couple or 3 years with FranConnect and was the senior VP there for a while. So again, who knew then that that this role that I'm in now with FRM would have been on the horizon? So, I feel like everything you do is preparation for something down the road. And in the moment, we don't always recognize it that way. And things that happen to us, sometimes they're painful. But and if you look at them from that point of view and paint yourself a victim, they will remain painful. I've always tried to work through those times knowing that there's something coming really, really good, and I'm getting prepared for it by going through this right now. And I've said that too, even when I sold and was in franchise sales for years and years and years, I'd always wanted to try to figure out how many no's did I need to get to the next yes. Because if I knew that, no then didn't hurt me anymore. If I needed 18 or 20 or 30 no's to get to the next yes, every no I got put me one closer to the next deal. And so I always have that, front-facing point of view, the windshield, not the rearview mirror. Try to get over the things that you've suffered through, try to learn from them, but try to help make the next experience one step closer, because you needed to live through something that you're going through right now to get you to that next place.
With fantastic advice. A lot of people on franchise today, listening to franchise today, and we do have a lot of loyal listeners and new ones every week, probably don't really know that it was you, Stan, that is responsible for franchise today being where it is today. Because a couple of years ago, you and I had a conversation. I think it was after having you as a guest on Franchise Day, but you and I had reason to talk, and you had said, where are you going with Franchise Today? And I was at a time where I had just didn't really know where I was going. I kind of lost a little bit of the passion. Of course, we were coming out of 2008 to 2012 and trying to recover accordingly. So we were all involved in building our businesses back to where they needed to be. And I just really wasn't sure where I was going with it. And you proposed us joining forces together. You were doing a show on sensible franchising at the time. And we joined forces. And I'm ever, ever, ever thankful for you taking the time and really expressing yourself in a way that you and I had never really had that type of conversation before. And I'm really honored and pleased and thankful that we did, because I love what we've done with Franchise Today, taking it to a new level from where we are today. And some of the guests that we've had on the show wouldn't be possible without your involvement. So that's a very heartfelt, warm thanks to you.
Well, it goes both ways, Paul, and I've been having a ton of fun doing this, and it's rewarding, and I like the discipline of knowing every week that we've got work to do to learn about people, and hopefully we make a difference in many people's lives who to take some nuggets out of the people that they get to listen to through our interviews. So all good on that, and I'm thrilled to be part of it as well. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. So there's so many other things that we can talk about. There's professional athletes, franchise initiative. There's, where you're going to be at Labor Day, involved with the annual Wing Festival. But, of course, seeing the clock ticking, so to speak, just 20 minutes ahead of us, I want to make sure talking about, technology in franchising today, and specifically, your role the last few years with FRM Solutions, and how important, technology has become and will increasing to heights I don't think we could even imagine. So why don't you give us a little bit of an overview? Like you said, you had WSI, you touched on some of that, the whole Y2K. You worked with I9, handling some of the Process Peak stuff, then Fran Connect. Now bring us up to FRM Solutions.
Well, FRM is an acronym, Paul, as well as the name of the company. It's an acronym for Franchise Relationship Management, and it's what we do. We help franchisors manage relationships with both their prospective as well as existing franchisees using a tool that is basically built out of Microsoft Dynamics CRM. So there's two big players in CRM in the corporate world, and Dynamics CRM is one of them, and Salesforce is the other. And then the two of them are kind of like fighting over bragging rights, all the time for who's the biggest or who's the best. It's kind of like Chicago and Atlanta when it comes to the airports. If it's not one, it's the other. But, the two of them are arguably the busiest airports in the world. We've taken Dynamics CRM and heavily invested in creating extensions of Dynamics CRM that are franchise relevant and only franchise relevant. And so we've built basically what is an out-of-the-box tool that enables franchisors to have the very most powerful and the best CRM software as the center of their offering in Dynamics CRM, but with all the extensions and all the workflows and all the fields and all the things that we've contemplated for the management of franchise relationships, we've upped the game for them and given them something that's far more affordable out of the box than it would have been for them to try to create or customize anything close to this on their own. Now, we still further configure it to each individual client's requirements because we know that most everything about a franchise process is pretty similar. It's usually a 6 to 8 week event helping somebody learn about your brand. But your steps at one brand might be different than someone else's. You may do a discovery day early on here, and somebody else does a decision day later on there. So we kind of have to configure all of our systems to each individual brand's further requirements. But coming out of the box, we deliver an affordable solution that will help franchisors manage the experiences of each of their sellers, having maybe 30 or 35 blips on the radar at any given time without any balls dropping, getting the email and drip campaigns going and all the touch points working. And then we deliver on the candidate side a digital experience for them to learn between their scheduled phone calls in a contained environment, which is built in a WordPress format, such that everything that a candidate is looking at, that the franchisor has loaded into that environment for them to be doing their due diligence and their homework between scheduled calls, is available for the candidate to look on and click into. And these can be digital documents, these could be online forms, these could be WAV files and streaming videos, but every click that's made by the candidate is reporting back to the seller's dashboard. And so franchise salesperson is in a position of being able to better see who's doing what between their scheduled calls, who's actually leaning in and doing the work they're supposed to be doing. If you see somebody clicking on a video 5 or 6 times if it were me on the selling side, I'd know that this is a person that's really leaning in. They're not just looking at the assets that I'm providing for them. They're showing them to others. Who am I going to call tomorrow first thing? I can tell who to call by seeing what's going on. I have business intel coming to me that I never used to have any other way. And so that's just one module. We have store opening modules that enable franchisors to use our tool to help them manage the projects and take themselves out of some of the mundane things that they used to have to do manually. The bottom line is, if I can give a franchisor back cycles of their time to do productive things that will help add to the top and bottom line for themselves and for their franchisees, and stay focused on things that are driving EBITDA, and let my technology lift some of those tasks from you that you used to be having to do by yourself. And if you can get back 10 or 15% of your day here and 10 or 15% of your day there for a lot less money than it costs to even add a single person to your head count, I'm doing more for you in many ways and places and for a whole lot less investment of time and money. And that's what FRM does. So it does it in franchise sales, store opening, legal and compliance, operational support. We have all these different buckets that we have built out to assist the professionals in those roles to better fulfill their core competencies, and every step of the way know what's going on and be collaborative and cooperative and communicative internally and out. And then it helps leadership when you're using all these modules to start looking at KPIs that are coming out of the metrics that are being developed, because now you're seeing things coming out of your departments that are rolling up to support and rolling up to reports to enable you to better work on the business as each of your professionals and each of their departments are working in the business. And that's a beautiful thing.
That is a beautiful thing. And, as the show title today was Outside the Box Thinking Drives Success in Franchising, which I've seen in a number of places as they've described your bio, so to speak. Thinking outside the box, what impresses me about what you've been doing with FRM is not just staying, within the core, so to speak, and saying this is what it is, and, have a take it or leave it type attitude, which is very much what I have found the norm with a lot of software providers, because we know that it's expensive to update and to add on different things, and they try to force people into a certain little cubby hole, so to speak. And I haven't found that certainly with FRM. A matter of fact, I was very impressed and took a lot of notes about a recent Wednesday Wise webinar you did for the IFA, and you talked about some of the changes going on in franchise development and how technology is affecting that. Share a little bit about that, because I think this is just an extension of the various ways that FRM also helps their clients.
Well, Paul, I think some of what you're describing, I thank you for all that, and appreciate you're sharing these kind words back. But, we're in a business that is so unique in that technology, like anywhere, is an important and meaningful tool for any franchisor to grow and compete in today's world. You've got to have it. But we're in a high-tech, high-touch environment in franchising, and it's a combination of both. You're never going to replace a franchise development person with software. You're never going to replace a field support person with software. You're never going to do any of those things that robots and artificial intelligence and all the things that we can continue to gain access to help us be better in our businesses are part of the recipe. The people part is something in this world of franchising that will never be displaced. So we have to just get smarter about using the tools that can help us support our franchisees, but not replace our touch with tech. It's never going to work. It's still a people business. It's still a relationship business. But if you can use tools to help you better learn how to manage those relationships, things like Zoracle, if you can use things that you can learn from artificial intelligence or from machine learning. If you've got years and years and years of database, and you're just using those to recycle leads or to try to reignite something from years past, I guess it's better than doing nothing. But you can run those databases of information through machine learning and create algorithms that will help you learn some things about who did or didn't buy, who you should have or maybe should not have awarded a franchise to. You can use technology as an incredible support mechanism in your business. It's never going to be a replacement in franchising for the people touch, but you can do so much more with your cycles of time and learn so much more from the data that's collected by employing modern day technology. As I said on the webinar, if you're going to get into the category of those who want to go north of the 1 or 2% of leads that typically close, you cannot continue to drive your dad's old Buick. You got to get into the world of available technology to enable you and empower you to be doing more with what you've got and learning more about the people that you're doing business with or potentially doing business with, and then going out and finding more like them and letting the technology assist you in doing so.
Yeah, very well said, and especially about, not replacing people. You're absolutely right, and franchising is all about people. It is all about relationships. It is all about interdependency of those relationships. Let's take a kind of a fun direction, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about the upcoming Wing Festival going on in Buffalo, your role in it. But I think probably just as important, what I'd like to hear is, why you continue in that when you're so busy in so many other things and it's, appears to be so far away from, what you're doing today.
Yes and no, I guess, Paul. It's kind of like looking at my LinkedIn profile. If you were somebody who didn't know me before and you hit me on LinkedIn, I might appear to be random or eclectic in that all these things that look like they're independently disassociated, but they're all very much connected and anything but random. The reason I do what I do up there, Paul, from 03 to 06, I participated in that festival and had a blast doing it. And Wing Zone won a lot of awards, and we made a lot of friends. It's kind of like the work in diversity. I made a lot of friends that I would have otherwise never known. In 06, when I left Wing Zone and sold my interest in the business, my good friend in Buffalo, New York, Drew Cerza, who is the founder and the promoter, he's the impresario, he's a modern-day P.T. Barnum is what I call him. But Drew runs the festival, and he said, Stan, you're not going to come back anymore. And I said, what do you mean I'm not going to come back anymore? He said, you're not going to be back. You sold your interest in Wing Zone, and you don't have a reason to come back. And, Buffalo's not a place that people necessarily just come back to if they don't have a reason for being here. And he and I had forged this incredible relationship and friendship. And Drew, created this thing called the Hall of Flame. It was a kind of a lark. He had this idea in his mind, but it never really gained traction. He was too busy doing the festival. So he said, I'm going to appoint you the chairman of the Buffalo Wing Hall of Flame. It'll keep you and me together. It will give us a reason to stay in touch. And we will continue to talk through the year. And we'll noodle ideas and brainstorm things. And we did. And we started this Hall of Flame, which we brought people into. Each year we celebrated somebody who had a role in moving the chicken wing from the trash can, which is where the chicken wing used to go. It was the least most desirable of the part of the bird, to the most expensive part of the bird. And many times during the year,
two on every bird.
But by the pound, chicken wings can be more expensive than filet mignon in football season. So the idea was let's just celebrate people who have made a difference. And each year at the festival, we've made inductions into the Hall of Flame. We brought in the Anchor Bar where it was all born, where it all started. The founders are long deceased, but we brought honor to them for creating this delicacy, which is now a worldwide craze. The following year, we brought the founders of Buffalo Wild Wings, who we said, hey, it all started at the Anchor Bar, but look where it went. These guys took it to Wall Street. And Scott Lowry, who is still a tremendous friend, he comes to the festival every year, the founder of Buffalo Wild Wings. His deceased partner, Jim Disbrow, obviously not able to make it, except in spirit. I brought Matt and Adam, my partners from Wing Zone, into the Hall of Fame. We brought Frank's Red Hot, which is a sauce that is universally the base for so many chicken sauce recipes. And this thing has continued to grow. The founders of Wingstop. We even inducted Bill Murray into the National Buffalo Wing Hall of Fame for the 10th anniversary because there'd be no Wing Festival but for a part that Bill Murray played in one of his eclectic movies, a movie called Osmosis Jones, which was the inspiration for the Wing Fest in the first place. So, Paul, to me, it's just about everything I do. It's the people that you stay connected to. Eric Badlands Booker, who does our song for the opening of Franchise Today and the close, he's a competitive wing eating champion. He's part of this federation of competitive eaters that go around the world eating for a living. Not a bad way to make money, Paul. I don't know.
No,
but these are friends. These are friends that are friends like IFA, with the same feeling that you and I get every year when we're going to go to convention, or we go to the fall conference in D.C., or we're going to the MFV Expos. It's the same feeling of anticipation of who you're going to see. And I'm going to be judging with Chef Armand and Don Esmond from the Buffalo News in amateur contests on Saturday, and making the inductions to I can't tell you who just yet on Friday night for this year's Hall of Fame inductees. But Labor Day weekend for the past dozen years, I guess, has become as much a part of my life as any annual event that we participate in the franchise side of our world. And I love doing it.
Well, that's just great. That's just great. Well, Stan, we're going to be closing up here pretty quick, and it might be simpler to say, in all the upcoming events over the next few months, which ones won't you be at? But give us a kind of of how people can find you and where to look for you in the very near future. We'll put it that way.
In the most immediate future, www.frmsolutions.com is the easiest way to find me, and happy to hear from you. I'll be going up next week to Chicago, sponsoring and participating in the Franchise Capital Exchange, also a sponsor of the Fay Gray Baker Daniels Franchise Summit the following week off to Buffalo. From there, we go to IFA to the fly-in for FAN on the 11th. And then right around the corner from that, we're already looking at Springboard, which we sponsor and participate in with Lane and Brad in Philly. And right around the corner from that, where everybody's going to come see me, because we'll all be back in Atlanta for Franchise Development and Leadership Conference in October. So here we are, Paul, at the starting line of what I love to call silly season when it comes to travel and events.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, Stan, as always, love you, man. Love having you as my co-host. But more importantly, thanks for being our guest today on Franchise Today.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks to everybody who listens. And I'd love to hear from you. And please don't hesitate to give me a shout.
Until next week, my name is Paul Segreto, wishing you the best, the very best, in this great, great thing we call franchising. Franchise Today is out.
Franchise pros, Stan the man, Paul Segreto, Badlands, baby. Franchising today, sustainable growth, the sensible franchising. Franchise today, sustainable growth, the sensible franchising. Franchise today. Franchising today. Franchising today. Yeah.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. At American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.